You walk slowly along the narrow earthen lane that leads out to the fields. On either side, the willow hedge weaves itself into a soft, living wall, its slender branches drooping in the night air. Each twig carries tiny beads of frost, dew, and when you reach out with your fingertips, the drops tremble, fall, and scatter like little pearls upon the ground. The world is hushed, as though it has wrapped itself in a cloak of silence. There are no hurried steps, no sharp noises, only the quiet breath of wind moving through the grass and the steady, rhythmic chorus of crickets singing from their hidden homes. With every step you take, the soil presses gently underfoot, leaving behind a muffled imprint that confirms your presence in this slumbering world. In the distance, the silhouette of a church tower rises faintly against the indigo sky, its pointed roof carving a sharp shape into the stars. A single bell tolls from within, deep and slow, carrying its note far across the valley. The sound floats outward, mingling with the wind, until it reaches the very edge of the field where you stand. It is not a bell of alarm. It is a bell of welcome, an unhurried reminder that time, in this place, does not rush, but stretches long and gentle. You breathe deeply, drawing into your chest the scents that belong only to this land, the damp fragrance of earth after a cold night, the dry sweetness of stored straw, and the faint green of willow leaves. The mixture is strangely comforting. It feels familiar, as though you have stood here before in another life or in a dream that now gently returns. With each breath, you are drawn closer into the field's embrace, where a quiet mystery waits to unfold. Above you, the young crescent moon hangs like a silver thread, its light tender rather than fierce. It paints everything with a soft sheen, laying a pale veil over grass, over pathway, and even over your own open palms. The stars scatter sparingly across the sky, each one blinking at its own rhythm, not hurried, simply present, as if keeping you company in your slow approach. Beneath your shoes, the wild grass is heavy with dew. The moisture seeps through fabric and leather alike, offering a cool reminder of the bond between people and the ground beneath them. Occasionally, a sudden rustle passes by, field mouse darting for cover, perhaps, or a sparrow disturbed in its nest. Yet none of these sounds bring alarm. They belong to the quiet breathing of the land, reassuring in their natural order. You pause for a moment near the hedge and lift your gaze outward. The barley field lies ahead, spreading wide into the horizon. But it does not glow gold, as you might expect at the edge of harvest. Instead, the entire surface shimmers with a strange pallor. A delicate frost has blanketed every stalk, cloaking the crop in a silvery mantle. The seeds, once plump with promise, now seem to have vanished, leaving behind stiff stems that stand motionless in the night. The sight is beautiful, yet unsettling, an otherworldly calm holding secrets within. A faint breeze drifts across the field, stirring the frozen grass and carrying with it a sound like whispering. You lean your head, listening carefully. It is not words you can make out, but rather a murmuring presence, as though voices of long-on villagers were still telling their stories in the language of wind and frost. You cannot decipher the meaning, yet you sense the intention, not to frighten, but to invite you deeper into the night's tale. Far ahead, a pinprick of golden light flickers within a thatched cottage. From its chimney rises a thin column of smoke, twisting as it climbs and dissolves into the frosted air. The light quivers, fragile against the immensity of the dark, but you know what it means. Inside, a family gathers near their hearth, warm broth steaming on the table, bread baking in the oven. That knowledge settles in your chest like an ember, a comfort against the field's cold strangeness. It is the balance of this world, frost outside, fire inside, uncertainty beyond, closeness within. You keep walking, trailing your hand lightly along the willow branches. The leaves brush against your skin with a caress so soft it feels like a gesture of reassurance. The field ahead expands, opening itself slowly before you, and you realize you are not only an observer. You belong to this moment, to this land, to the night, and its whispered riddles. As you stand there, at the meeting of hedge and open field, you understand that silence itself is a kind of story. It speaks of patience, of watchful waiting, of truths that will reveal themselves in time. And as the frost gleams beneath the moonlight, and the faraway bell hums its gentle note once more, you know you are ready. You take one more breath, steady and calm, and prepare to step deeper into the heart of the fields, where the mystery of the vanished harvest is waiting, softly, quietly, like the rhythm of your own breath. The path curves softly toward the village, and as you step closer, you notice a faint glow ahead, the cottage of the village weaver. Its small windows are latticed with wood, and pale threads of light leak out through the cracks, touching the frosted ground like slender ribbons. The thatched roof slopes heavily with years of weather, yet the home stands firm, leaning slightly as if bowing to the earth it rests upon. You approach slowly. The air smells faintly of smoke and spun wool, a mingling of warmth and work. Outside the door, a wooden frame leans against the wall, where skeins of dyed yarn hang like garlands: indigo, russet, saffron, and muted greens. The colors glow gently even in the dim night, softened by the moon's silver veil. The door is half open, as though inviting. You step into the low threshold, stooping just slightly, and find yourself in a room lined with woven cloths that cover the walls like tapestries of daily life, simple patterns of stripes and checks, a hint of floral knots here, a diamond motif there. Each piece carries not only the labor of the weaver's hands but also the rhythm of her days, woven into threads that whisper of meals cooked, songs hummed, and seasons endured. At the center of the room sits the weaver herself. She is an older woman, her shoulders rounded from years at the loom. The hair, silver grey, falls in loose strands around her face. She works not hurriedly, but with a steady grace, her fingers moving like the wings of a small bird. Every press of the pedal, every pull of the shuttle is deliberate, slow, almost like the ticking of a gentle clock. When she notices you, she smiles, though her eyes carry a shadow of something unspoken. She gestures for you to sit upon a wooden stool nearby. The stool creaks beneath your weight, but it feels sturdy, carved by the hands of a carpenter who, like the weaver, gave his life to his craft. For a moment, the only sound is the loom, the soft click of wood, the faint whisper of threads drawn tight. Then, in a voice as low as the wind in the hedge, she begins to speak. "Last night," she says, "I could not sleep." Her words fall into the quiet like drops into still water. You lean forward, listening. "The leaves outside my window," she continues, "they whispered more than usual. Not the normal chatter of the wind. It was different." I lay awake, my hands still, my eyes open in the dark. I could hear it, like something passing over the fields, brushing against the barley, slipping away before morning. Her fingers pause on the loom, resting gently against the threads. She tilts her head as though she can still hear it even now, an echo lingering in her memory. "Do you know the sound of cloth tearing?" she asks softly. It was like that, but quieter, as though the night itself was being unstitched. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine it, the faint rending of fabric, but stretched across a landscape, subtle and ghostly. You can almost hear it, thin as breath, winding through the stalks of grain. The weaver resumes her work, pulling the shuttle through, tightening the threads. "This morning," she whispers, "the crops had vanished. Not harvested, not stolen, vanished. Only frost remained." Her eyes lift to yours, steady but troubled. "It is not the first time I've heard strange things. Sometimes, the land tells us secrets, but we forget to listen. Last night, the land was speaking. I am certain of it." She leans back slightly, her chair groaning in protest. "When my mother taught me to weave, she told me each thread carries a memory. She said, if you listen closely, the cloth will tell you the story of the hands that made it. I wonder, now, if the fields do the same. If each stalk of grain carries a story, and last night, those stories were gathered up, carried away into the frost." Her voice softens even further. "Perhaps the frost is not an enemy, but a keeper. A guardian who hides what we are not ready to use. Perhaps the seeds were taken into its keeping, only to be returned when the time is right." You let her words settle. They feel like threads themselves, looping through your thoughts, binding images together, the silvered field, the whispering leaves, the sound of fabric torn. The story is not frightening. It is steady, like the loom, measured, even, patient. It does not offer an answer, but it offers something gentler, a way to rest in the mystery, to allow it to exist without haste. The weaver's hands return to their rhythm. Wood clicks against wood, threads stretch and tighten, colors form. The sound is hypnotic, like waves on a distant shore. You feel your breathing fall into sync with it, long and slow. On the table nearby, a small oil lamp flickers. Its light dances across the walls, illuminating the woven cloths so that they appear almost alive. Atoms shift in the glow, and for a moment, you could believe the threads themselves whisper, just as the leaves did last night. The weaver hums softly now, a tune without words. It is neither joyous nor sorrowful, but something in between, lullaby for the land, perhaps, or for the seeds that have vanished into frost. Her humming rises and falls with the loom, and you sense that she has done this countless nights, sitting by her lamp, weaving not only cloth but comfort. Outside, the frost glitters faintly on the windowsill. You notice how the cold and the warmth coexist here, the frost pressing against the glass, the lamp glowing within, the weaver bridging them with her steady hands. She does not resist the frost, nor does she ignore it. She acknowledges it, works alongside it, accepts its mystery. She looks to you once more. When you walk the field, she says, listen carefully. Sometimes the earth whispers. Sometimes it weaves a story only you can hear. If the grain is gone, it has not left us. It is simply telling its tale in another place. Her words linger like the final note of a bell. You sit in silence, absorbing them, feeling the rhythm of the loom pulse through the quiet air. It is not an answer, but it is enough. After a time, you rise. The weaver nods, neither smiling nor frowning, only acknowledging the moment as it passes. You step back through the door, into the chill night. The frost greets you again, silvering the path, but now it feels different. Less like an enemy, more like a presence with its own voice. Behind you, the loom continues its soft song, wood against thread, thread against wood, weaving the night together. Ahead of you, the field waits, wide and pale, its whispers beckoning. You take a breath, long and deep, and step forward. You leave the weaver's cottage, closing the wooden door softly behind you. The faint hum of her loom still lingers in your ears, steady and calming, like the heartbeat of the village itself. Outside, the night has deepened. The air carries the crispness of frost, and the moon, thin, delicate, almost fragile, hangs higher in the sky, a pale crescent casting its quiet blessing over the land. The path widens as you move toward the open field. The sound of your footsteps muffles into the frost-laden earth, each step cushioned by dew and grass stiffened by the cold. The silence is immense, but not empty. It is a silence filled with layers, the hush of wind, the distant crack of ice along the river bank, the occasional hoot of an owl echoing from the woods. When you first gaze across the field, your breath stills. The frost has transformed the barley into a shimmering ocean. Each stalk gleams with a silvery edge, sparkling faintly in the moonlight. It is not the dull grey of ordinary ice, but something finer, like powdered glass scattered across the land. The entire field lies in hushed brilliance, as though a great hand had sprinkled starlight down upon it, while the villagers slept. You walk closer, allowing your hand to brush the tips of the stalks. They feel brittle, as though they might crumble into powder if you pressed too hard. You remember the weaver's words, the land whispers, and sometimes we forget to listen. You tilt your head, straining to hear. At first, it seems like nothing. Just silence, heavy and endless. But then you notice a subtle sound beneath the quiet, so faint that you wonder if it is truly there. It is like the faint crackle of cloth being folded, or the soft tear of fabric coming apart thread by thread. It echoes the weaver's memory, the sound of the night unstitching itself. You pause and breathe, letting the sound wash over you. It is not frightening. It is delicate, as though the frost itself is speaking, carrying secrets in the shifting crystals. The moonlight plays across the field, and for an instant you almost see shapes moving within the silvered rose, not figures, not people, but hints of forms, curves like the arc of a loom, or threads glistening like yarn pulled across an invisible shuttle. The frost, it seems, is weaving its own tapestry upon the land. You recall stories told by old villagers. That frost is not merely frozen dew, but a veil placed by unseen hands. Some say it is the breath of angels, protecting seeds from wandering eyes. Others believe it to be a sign, a marker of a year when patience will be required, when harvest will come later than expected. These stories, like the cloths on the weaver's wall, are passed down through generations, not to be proven, but to be carried, soft truths for gentle times. You kneel now, lowering yourself to the level of the stalks. From here, the frost crystals stand tall, each one a tiny tower of ice, clear as glass yet edged in pale fire from the moon's glow. You see your reflection faintly, broken into countless fragments, each shard holding a sliver of your face. It feels as though the land is mirroring you back, reminding you that you, too, are part of its fabric. As you remain still, the cold air sharpens your senses. You notice the way the frost spreads evenly, not clustered or scattered, but as if laid with intention. Each row of barley looks brushed, carefully tended. The seeds themselves are gone, yet no sign of disturbance marks the earth. No footprints, no scattered husks, only absence wrapped in silver. The longer you watch, the more the frost seems alive. A faint glimmer passes across it, moving like a ripple over water. You wonder if it is just the wind stirring the stalks, or if it is something more. You listen again, and the sound returns, the fabric like tearing, so soft it could be mistaken for imagination. Perhaps, you think, the frost has hidden the grain. It's stolen, not lost, but hidden, drawn into a deeper place, like seeds tucked inside a dream. The thought is oddly soothing. Seeds vanish in one form only to return in another. It is the nature of growth, of cycles, of time itself. You rise again and take a few steps into the field. The moonlight drapes itself across your shoulders, cool and weightless. The stars above glimmer faintly, but the frost at your feet seems brighter, as though the land has become its own sky. Walking among the stalks feels like walking through constellations, each frozen crystal a star beneath your hand. In the distance, you hear movement. Not loud, only a shift, perhaps a deer brushing against hedges or a fox padding softly in search of food. The creatures of the night continue their lives, unconcerned with vanished crops, their needs simple, their rhythms steady. You realize that mystery belongs not only to people but to the land, and animals as well. Each has its secrets, and each reveals them only in part. As you stand, surrounded by frost, you think of the villagers waking at dawn. Their faces will crease with worry, their hands will tighten around empty baskets. Yet here, in the stillness of moonlight, the loss feels less like tragedy and more like transformation. The frost is not a thief but a messenger, carrying something forward, keeping it safe until the right moment. You close your eyes and breathe deeply again. The air is sharp, almost sweet, carrying a purity that clears your mind. When you open your eyes, the field remains silver, silent, endless. The moon continues its slow climb, and the frost continues its soft whispering. You take a step back toward the path. The mystery is not solved, but it does not need to be. Some mysteries are not meant for unraveling. They are meant to lull, to soften, to lead you gently onward. The field watches as you leave, its frozen shimmer glowing in the moonlight. You know you will return, but for now, the frost holds the story close, unstitched threads waiting to be woven again. You leave the moonlit field behind and follow the path that curves toward the village's storehouse. In daylight, the storehouse is not a place of wonder, but of necessity. Built of rough-hewn timber, it is square and practical, its thick beams darkened by years of smoke and weather. By night, however, it becomes something else. Under the glow of the crescent moon, the wood gleams with frost, and the roof thatched with straw glimmers faintly, like a crown set upon the building's head. The door is fastened with a simple latch, nothing ornate. Villagers trust one another, theft is rare, and hunger is usually shared rather than hidden. You lift the latch gently and step inside. The heavy wood creaks, releasing a scent that is unmistakable: grain, straw, and the faint mustiness of stored earth. The air within is cool, but not biting. Stone slabs form the floor, absorbing the chill of night, while rows of bins and barrels line the walls. In better years, these containers would be brimming with seeds, each one a promise for the season to come. Tonight, however, you see spaces that are empty, barrels that echo hollow when you tap them, bins filled only with a dusting of husks. Your hand brushes against the rim of a barrel. A few kernels cling stubbornly, pale and shrunken, as though drained of their fullness. You pick one up and roll it between your fingers. It feels lighter than it should, as though its weight has gone elsewhere. You think again of the frost, perhaps not taking, but moving, lifting, storing the grain in some invisible place beyond the reach of hands. Against the far wall, you notice sacks piled neatly, their cloth tied at the top with coarse rope. You untee one carefully and peer inside. The grain within seems intact, But when you press your hand deep into the sack, you feel a dampness at the bottom. The cold has crept in, stealing not the grain itself but its strength. The villagers know this danger well. Frost that seeps into storehouses can rot the seeds before they ever touch soil. It is why ashes from the hearth are sometimes sprinkled upon the floor to draw moisture away, to guard against the slow hunger of dampness. Imagine the villagers here at harvest time. Men and women bending together to lift sacks, children carrying small baskets, elders counting carefully as grain is measured and poured. Their laughter would mingle with the scrape of wood, the shuffle of feet, the grunt of effort. The storehouse, then, would hum with life, the very sound of security. Now it is hushed, almost solemn, the air thick with absence. In one corner stands a wooden chest, its lid carved with simple patterns of vines. You kneel beside it and trace the designs with your finger. They are not the work of a master artisan, but of someone who cared enough to make the chest more than plain wood. You lift the lid. Inside are tools, a winnowing basket, a flail for threshing, a clay pot with cracks along its rim. Each object bears marks of use, smoothed edges, darkened handles. They are not relics but companions of daily life, resting now in silence. You take the flail in your hand, feeling the weight of it. You imagine how it once struck stalk after stalk, releasing seeds with steady rhythm. The sound of it, sharp and repetitive, would have filled the yard outside, echoing off the walls. It was the song of work, the song of sustenance. Tonight, in the hush of the storehouse, the flail is quiet, its wooden arms dangling like tired limbs. Placing it back, you move toward a small table near the door. Upon it lies a ledger, its pages rough, the ink faint but legible. You run your eyes across the numbers, careful counts of sacks, bushels, portions set aside for tithe, for feast days, for sowing. The last entries are uncertain, written in a hand that falters, 2 sacks spoiled, barrel half lost to damp, grain missing from bin. The words are not angry, only resigned. They speak of a people who endure, who measure their misfortunes as carefully as their blessings. You close the ledger softly and let your gaze wander again over the room. It is not empty, not truly. Even in its barrenness, it holds stories. Each empty barrel tells of effort once spent, of fields once golden. Each hollow sack whispers of meals that sustained families, of bread baked and broken, of porridge stirred at dawn. The storehouse is a memory, Epa, holding not only what is present, but what has passed. You lean against the wall and close your eyes for a moment. The cool air brushes your face, and you hear the faint groan of timbers as the building settles. In the quiet, you imagine the seeds themselves speaking, not words, but a soft murmur, like a sigh. They do not mourn their absence, they simply remind you that they are part of a cycle. Hidden now, perhaps, but not lost. What disappears in one season often returns in another, changed but alive. Your eyes open again, drawn to the small window near the roof. Through it, the moon peers down, casting a pale beam across the floor. The light falls upon the scattered husks, making them shine faintly, like fragments of silver. For a fleeting moment, the storehouse no longer feels empty. It feels full of light, full of patience, full of the quiet certainty that the earth provides in its own time. You step back toward the door, your hand resting once more on the latch. Before leaving, you look around once more. The barrels, the sacks, the chest of tools, they are not symbols of loss, but of endurance. They remind you that even when grain vanishes, the knowledge of how to sow, how to harvest, how to store remains. And that knowledge, passed from one generation to the next, is as vital as the seeds themselves. With a gentle push, you open the door and step outside. The night greets you again with its crisp air and silver frost. The storehouse stands behind you, sturdy and faithful, its emptiness not a defeat but a pause, a waiting. The path leads back to the fields, where whispers still linger in the frozen barley. You breathe deeply, letting the coolness fill your chest, and move forward once more. The story of the vanished grain is not finished. It is only unfolding, slowly, like the opening of a bud in spring. And you walk on, steady and calm, ready to hear what the night will tell next. When you leave the storehouse, the frost greets you again. The path is pale and shimmering, as if each stone and blade of grass has been brushed with moonlight. You walk slowly, your breath rising in faint clouds, your footsteps soft until the narrow lane bends and opens once more to the wide edge of the field. At first, it appears unchanged, the same silvered expanse, the same brittle stalks glistening under the crescent moon. But as you step closer, you notice something new. Along the very border of the field, pressed faintly into the frost, are shapes. Not deep, not forceful, but delicate imprints. Footprints. You crouch, careful not to disturb the frost, and study them. They are small, scattered in uneven clusters. Some are round and dainty, with tiny claw marks at their tips, marks of sparrows, perhaps hopping about in the night. Others are longer, narrow, with splayed edges that suggest rabbits or hares. And here, faint, but clearer than the rest, are prints that look almost human, though far too small to belong to any grown villager. You tilt your head, tracing the lines with your eyes. Could they be the steps of children? But no, children would not wander into the fields at night, not in such cold. The shape is not quite right either. The heel is missing, the arch too shallow. They seem more like impressions left by creatures who walk lightly, pressing with toes rather than the whole foot. The frost has preserved them tenderly, holding each mark in a fragile cast of ice. You imagine the creatures moving here in the hours before dawn, silent and unhurried, their paths weaving along the border as though circling the field in some quiet ritual. You rise slowly, letting your eyes follow the line of prints. They do not plunge into the field itself, where the vanished grain once stood. Instead, they move carefully around the edge, as though respecting a boundary. They keep to the border, tracing a circle that embraces the field without breaking into its heart. This thought stirs something within you. Perhaps the field is not only earth and stalks, but a space that is marked, guarded. The footprints seem to acknowledge this, keeping their distance, as if guided by an invisible rule. You step along the edge, following the prints. The moonlight helps, casting faint shadows into each indentation, revealing the curve of claw, the softness of pad. The path leads you to a corner of the field where an old boundary stone rises from the ground. Covered in moss and rimmed with frost, the stone stands crooked but firm, a marker placed by hands long gone. You touch its surface. The stone is cold, rough beneath your palm, yet steady. Villagers say that such stones are older than memory, placed to settle disputes over land, to mark where one family's field ends and another's begins. Some believe the stones themselves hold watch, ensuring fairness, keeping balance. Here, the footprints gather densely, circling the stone, then scattering outward again. You picture the creatures pausing here, drawn to the marker as if it were more than stone. Perhaps it hums faintly in a language only they can hear, a language of boundaries, of lines drawn and respected. As you linger, you hear movement again, the faintest rustle, like a body brushing against grass. You turn your head, but see nothing. The frost glimmers, the field breathes quietly, and the prints remain where they are, silent witnesses. Recall the old woman's whisper, the weaver's memory of leaves stirring strangely. Perhaps it was not only the wind she heard, but the soft passage of these creatures, circling the field, tracing its edge like keepers of a secret. You crouch once more, your breath close to the ground, and imagine the small lives behind each mark. A sparrow lifting frost with each hop, a hare pausing to test the air, a fox placing its paw with measured care. Each footprint is a story, brief but real, inscribed upon the frost for one night only. And the almost human shapes, those shallow, arched impressions, linger in your mind. They do not belong to children, nor to beasts you know. They feel older, stranger, yet not threatening. If anything, they feel gentle, like the touch of unseen guardians who step lightly so as not to disturb what they watch. The longer you look, the more you see. Footprints overlapping, weaving together like threads in a tapestry. The field's border becomes a woven edge, stitched by the steps of bird, beast, and something more. The frost holds them, but only for a little while. You know that by morning, with the rise of the sun, the prints will fade, melting into the soil, leaving no trace for the daylit eyes of villagers. Only you, here in the hush of night, bear witness to them fully. You straighten slowly, gazing across the field once more. The grain is gone, but its story continues in whispers of frost, in murmurs of moonlight, and now, in the footprints at its edge. Loss is not silence. Loss moss has its own language, written briefly in the silver canvas of night. You place your hand gently on the boundary stone once more, offering a silent nod to those who placed it, to those who respect it still. Then you turn back to the path, the frost crunching faintly beneath your shoes, and breathe deeply of the cold air. The footprints remain behind you, quiet and enduring, but in your heart you carry them forward. Each step you take feels lighter now, as though accompanied by unseen company, the sparrows, the hares, the foxes, and the mysterious keepers whose steps resemble your own. The night is vast, the frost unbroken, and yet, with each footprint you have seen, the mystery feels less lonely. It feels shared, as though the land itself has companions who watch, who move gently through its silence. You continue along the field's edge, knowing that the night has many more whispers yet to reveal. You walk onward along the field's edge until the lane curves back toward the cottages. Here, the night air is touched with the faintest trace of smoke and herbs, a perfume that drifts from doorways and chimneys. The villagers are sleeping now, yet signs of their quiet labors remain. You see bundles of dried plants hung beneath eaves, tied in knots with twine. Some are sprigs of rosemary, sharp and evergreen. Others are humble stalks of straw, woven into small braids. These simple charms, placed by careful hands, are more than decoration. They are remedies against the frost. You pause at one doorway where a bunch of nettles hangs upside down, brittle and blackened from time. It sways gently in the draught, like a sentinel. Old wives say that nettles, when hung near a threshold, keep the cold from creeping inside. You touch the dried stalk, its sting long gone, leaving only the memory of its bite. It rustles faintly, whispering its duty, keeping vigil even through the hours when no one watches. Further along, a cottage window glows faintly. On the sill rests a small clay bowl filled with ash. The ash, grey and soft as silk, is the remnant of hearth fires. Villagers believe that scattering such ash at the edge of a field draws out the dampness, keeping frost from sinking too deep into the soil. The practice is as old as memory, passed from hand to hand, more faith than science, yet carried out faithfully each season. You imagine families walking to the fields at dusk, shaking handfuls of ash like a blessing, whispering hopes that the earth will drink it kindly. The lane leads you past a garden patch, now dormant in the frost. Yet here you notice curious shapes, circles marked with stones, filled with straw that has been burnt to black husks. These are the remains of smoke fires, small bonfires lit at the edges of crops. When the frost threatened, villagers would set these fires, letting the smoke drift low across the fields. They believed the smoke would cloak the plants, keeping them warm in its embrace. You kneel by one of the circles, touching the charred straw. It crumbles easily between your fingers, staining your skin with soot. Though the fire has long since died, its purpose remains an old gesture of protection, a memory of hands that once worked to hold back the cold. As you rise, you remember a story you once heard, that in some villages, people would walk the fields at midnight with torches, forming a line of flickering lights. They would march slowly, chanting, their flames chasing away the frost as though it were a spirit to be banished. The chant was low, steady, almost a song, and the torches left trails of smoke like ribbons floating above the grain. Perhaps it was not the fire itself, but the unity of the people, the shared belief, that warmed the earth. You continue along until you reach a well at the center of the hamlet. A bucket rests nearby, and beside it, small jars filled with water. Their surfaces are sprinkled with tiny grains of salt. A villager once explained that sprinkling salted water on the ground was thought to confuse the frost, keeping it from settling too heavily. You kneel and dip a finger into one jar. The water is icy, and when you taste it, it is sharp, mineral, carrying the tang of the earth itself. You set it down gently, imagining the hands that prepared it, the quiet prayers murmured over each jar. The remedies are not only physical but spiritual. From the chapel nearby drifts the faint scent of beeswax. Inside, candles have been lit, their flames steady and golden. Villagers believe that the warmth of prayer itself can shield the crops, that the light of candles woven with faith carries strength against the chill. You picture them kneeling there, their breath visible in the cold air, whispering not only for food but for protection, for gentleness, for endurance. At the edge of the square, you notice another charm, a wreath woven of barley stalks, dried and bound with red thread. It hangs above a doorway, a circle unbroken, symbolizing the cycle of seasons. Its presence is quiet but powerful. Even as the frost creeps into the fields, the wreath whispers of return, of growth hidden but not lost, of warmth that will come again. You walk back toward the field, carrying with you the memory of these remedies. They are humble, simple things: ash, smoke, salt, straw, herbs, prayers. Yet each one carries centuries of belief. They are not weapons, but offerings of care, gestures of hope. In their smallness, they hold a vast strength, for they remind the people that they are not powerless. They can answer the frost not with anger, but with rituals of love and patience. At the field's edge once more, you imagine the remedies layered upon the land. Ash sprinkled in grey lines, smoke drifting low, herbs tied at corners, wreaths hanging at thresholds, candles glowing in chapels. Together, they weave a tapestry of protection, as intricate as the weaver's cloth. Whether the frost obeys or not, the remedies create peace, a sense that nothing is left undone. You reach down and pick up a pinch of frost from a barley stalk. It melts almost instantly against your skin, leaving only a droplet of water. In that droplet, you see the reflection of moonlight, tiny yet bright. You smile faintly, realizing that even frost, feared and fought against, can hold beauty. Perhaps the remedies are not to banish it, but to welcome it gently, to remind it of balance. The night deepens, but your steps remain steady. The frost glimmers, the remedies linger in your mind, and the story continues, soft and patient, as you move forward into the next chapter of the mystery. The night has been long, but soft light now begins to stir at the horizon. You sense it before you see it, the faint paling of the sky, the cool breath of air that feels lighter, touched by the first brush of dawn. The frost, still silver and unyielding, seems to glow more gently, as though preparing to release its hold. You walk slowly toward the village church, its tower rising above rooftops, dark against the paling heavens. The chapel is small, its stones uneven and mossy, its roof patched in places with wood. Yet it has stood for generations, its bell calling villagers through seasons of feast and famine, through nights of mystery such as this. The first toll comes as a surprise, low, deep, resonant. The sound rolls through the air like a wave, spreading outward across the frost-laden fields. You feel it in your chest, as though the bell has struck not only the air but also your very heart. Then comes the second toll, steady and calm. Rhythm is unhurried, not a call to alarm, but a call to presence. Each note lingers, floating long after the clapper has swung away, blending with the hush of dawn. The frost itself seems to shiver at the sound, crystals trembling faintly under the resonance. Villagers begin to emerge from their cottages, wrapped in cloaks, their breath rising in pale clouds. They move slowly, not hurried, drawn by the bell as moths are drawn to light. Some carry lanterns, though dawn already begins to brighten the sky. Others bring baskets or small bundles of straw, offerings to place within the chapel. Their footsteps crunch softly over the frosted ground, a rhythm that joins the bell's song. You follow them, keeping your pace gentle. As you near the chapel, you hear the mingling sounds of life, a child murmuring sleepily, a woman whispering a prayer, a man clearing his throat in the cold air. These sounds do not disturb the peace. They weave into it, forming a tapestry of presence, a reminder that mystery and daily life always walk side by side. Inside, the chapel glows with the golden light of candles. Dozens of small flames flicker, their reflections dancing across the stone walls. The smell of beeswax fills the air, warm and sweet, mingling with the faint smoke of incense rising toward the rafters. Villagers gather quietly, their heads bowed, their hands clasped or resting gently on the shoulders of children. The priest stands near the altar, his robes plain but clean. His voice is low, steady, carrying not the weight of authority, but the warmth of familiarity. He speaks of patience, of trust in the cycle of seasons. He reminds them that frost may take but also may give, that absence today does not mean absence forever. His words are not loud, but in the hush of the chapel they feel vast, filling the air with comfort. You watch as villagers step forward one by one to place offerings at the altar, a loaf of bread, a small sack of flour, a woven wreath of straw. Each gift is modest, yet each carries meaning. They are tokens of endurance, reminders that though the crops have vanished, the people remain, bound together in faith and care. Outside, the bell continues to toll at intervals, marking the passage of time. Between each strike, silence blooms again, a silence that is not empty but rich, filled with breath, with candlelight, with the weight of presence. The children grow quieter, lulled by the rhythm of the bell, their eyelids heavy. Even the frost outside seems gentled, softened by the sound. You step back out of the chapel after a while, letting the cold air touch your face. The sky is now streaked with pale pink and gold, the sun's edge beginning to lift over the horizon. The bell's voice carries far across the fields, blending with the song of awakening birds. The frost still gleams, but in its shimmer you sense a shift, readiness to melt, to release its hold as the day warms. The villagers emerge behind you, their voices soft, their steps calm. Some head toward the fields, others toward their hearths. There is no panic, no despair. The bell has steadied them, reminding them of rhythm, of order, of the cycle that continues even when seeds vanish into mystery. You linger by the churchyard, watching as the light strengthens. Frost glitters like 1,000 tiny mirrors, reflecting the dawn's first warmth. For a moment, you imagine that each reflection is a seed hidden within, waiting to be reborn. The bell tolls once more, its deep note rolling across the land, and you feel it settle into you like a promise. You turn back toward the path, carrying the sound with you. Each step seems lighter, now, paced to the rhythm of the bell. Dawn has arrived, gentle and clear, and with it comes the reassurance that mystery does not end the story. It simply guides it forward. The fields remain, the people remain, and the bell continues to sing. The sun has now lifted a little higher, though its light is still thin, pale gold stretched across the horizon. The frost remains upon the fields, clinging stubbornly, yet in its shimmer you feel less of a chill and more of a hush, as though the earth is holding its breath. The villagers, leaving the chapel behind, do not return straight to their homes. Instead, they gather at the open square near the edge of the fields, where a ritual as old as memory is about to begin. You follow them, your footsteps slow, your breath mingling with theirs in soft clouds. In the center of the square, bundles of barley straw have been stacked into a careful heap. The stalks are bound with twine, their golden lengths dry and brittle from the harvest past. Even though much of the grain has vanished, enough stalks remain from earlier reaping to form this offering. The villagers form a circle around the heap, their cloaks pulled tight against the morning air. Children peek between their elders, eyes wide, their cheeks flushed with cold and curiosity. The priest arrives, carrying a small lantern whose flame wavers gently in the breeze. Its light is fragile compared to the rising sun, yet it holds a kind of authority, a last spark taken from the chapel's altar candle, brought forth into the open air. He sets the lantern at the foot of the shaves and bows his head. His voice, when it comes, is not loud but steady, carrying just enough to be heard around the circle. He speaks of warmth, of life within the earth, of seeds that sleep beneath soil and frost until called forth again. He prays for protection, for patience, for the return of growth when the season is right. Then, slowly, he lifts the lantern and tilts it toward the straw. The flame licks at the brittle edges, hesitates for a moment, then catches. A thin thread of smoke curls upward, grey against the pale sky. Soon, orange tongues of fire spread through the heap, crackling softly, devouring the straw with a hunger that is gentle rather than fierce. The villagers watch in silence. No one claps, no one cheers. Their reverence is quiet, born not of spectacle, but of trust. The fire is not meant to dazzle, it is meant to cleanse, to warm, to carry their hopes upward in smoke. The scent of burning straw drifts through the air, sharp yet sweet, mingling with the scent of earth and frost. The children press closer to their mothers, their eyes reflecting the firelight. Elders gaze steadily, remembering all the years they have stood in this same circle, through winters harsh and mild, through harvests full and empty alike. The flames rise higher, crackling louder now. Sparks leap into the air, carried upward like tiny messengers. The smoke thickens, drifting across the field in a thin veil. You notice how it spreads low, hugging the ground, wrapping the frost in a shroud of warmth. Old folk believe that this smoke guards the earth, coaxing it gently through the cold. Even if science might say otherwise, the gesture itself holds meaning, tells the land, we care for you, we will keep watch. As the fire consumes the shaves, the villagers begin to hum softly. It is not a song with words, but a tone, low and steady, a sound that rises and falls like the breath of the earth itself. The hum vibrates faintly through the ground beneath your feet. You feel it in your chest, deep and soothing, a resonance that aligns with the crackle of fire and the toll of the distant bell. You close your eyes for a moment and let the sounds surround you. Fire, hum, bell, breath, all weaving together into a rhythm that feels timeless. You could believe you are standing not only with these villagers, but with generations past, all gathered in their own times to perform the same ritual. Their voices, though gone, linger in the hum, carried forward by memory. When you open your eyes again, the fire is beginning to settle. The tallest flames sink into glowing embers, red and orange pulsing like a heartbeat. Smoke still curls upward, but thinner now, more delicate. The villagers remain in their circle, their silence unbroken. There is no rush. The ritual ends only when the fire has spoken its last. At last, the priest steps forward once more. He takes a handful of ash from the cooling heap and scatters it into the wind. The ash floats, caught on the morning breeze, drifting out across the fields. Some flakes land upon the frost, tiny black flecks against silver. Others vanish into the air, carried far, perhaps to rest upon distant soil. The scattering is deliberate, symbolic. The fire has given warmth, and now its remains return to the earth, to nourish what is hidden beneath. One by one, the villagers approach the embers. Each takes a pinch of ash and rubs it gently between their fingers, whispering a word of blessing or memory. Some scatter it at their feet, others place it in small pouches to carry home. The children are helped by their parents, tiny hands guided to touch the warm ash carefully, to feel its texture, to know its meaning. You, too, reach down and take a small pinch. It is warm, softer than sand, leaving a faint black stain on your fingertips. You hold it a moment, then release it into the breeze. It floats briefly, then disappears, its journey beyond your sight. The act is simple, yet it leaves you with a sense of connection to the earth, to the villagers, to the countless seasons that have come before. When the last ember fades, the circle slowly dissolves. Villagers step back, returning to their homes or to the fields, speaking in quiet tones. The children laugh softly now, their earlier solemnity giving way to relief. The ritual has steadied them, reminded them that even in uncertainty, there is a way forward. You stand for a while longer, watching the smoke drift. The field still lies silver and silent, its grain vanished, its mystery unsolved. Yet the fire's warmth lingers in the air, and in your chest. The ritual has not answered the question of where the crops have gone. It has not brought the seeds back. But it has given the people something more precious than answers, assurance. The frost will remain for a time. The fields will sleep under their silver cloak, but the villagers will endure, bound by ritual, by memory, by the act of standing together around fire. The sheaves are gone, but their burning has left behind a promise that what is lost may be transformed, that absence may hold within it the seed of return. You turn back toward the path once more, the scent of smoke clinging gently to your clothes. Behind you, the embers glow faintly, a final heartbeat of fire before cooling into silence. Ahead, the day stretches open, waiting for the next whisper of the mystery. And so you walk, steady and calm, carrying the warmth of the ritual with you into the cold brightness of morning. After the ritual, you wander along the path that follows the stream. The sound of running water guides you, soft and constant, like a whispered hymn from the earth itself. The frost along the banks sparkles as the sun begins its climb, but the water remains free, flowing steadily, refusing to be stilled. You walk slowly, letting the rhythm of the stream steady your own breath, until you see the tall shape of the mill rising ahead. The mill is a sturdy building of stone and timber, its roof sloping low on one side, its great wheel turning lazily in the current. The wheel creaks with each rotation, wood groaning faintly under the strain, but the sound is comforting rather than weary. It is the voice of long labor, of work that continues even when the world grows cold. You step closer and see the miller standing at the doorway. He is a broad man, shoulders bent from years of lifting sacks, his hands roughened by grain and rope. His hair is white, though his eyes are sharp, and when he sees you, he smiles faintly. He waves you nearer, then beckons you inside. The interior of the mill is filled with the smell of flour, warm and dusty, like bread yet unbaked. Sacks are piled against the walls, though fewer than in better years. The great grinding stones turn slowly, fed by a trickle of grain from a wooden chute. The sound is steady, stone against stone, a low, endless hum. The miller leans against a beam, watching the wheel turn, his face half in shadow. Strange winds last night, he murmurs, his voice deep and slow, the kind that shift without warning. They came from the north, sharp and biting, then changed to the east before the hour was done. I have seen winds carry many things, but never have I known them to carry away a harvest whole. You listen quietly, the hum of the stones filling the silence between his words. Once, when I was a boy, he continues, my father told me a tale of the north wind. They say it is not just air but a spirit, restless and wandering. It blows hard when it is hungry, searching for things to carry, to scatter. Sometimes it takes roofs. Sometimes it takes fences. And sometimes his eyes narrow slightly. Sometimes it takes what it fancies from the fields. He reaches for a handful of flour from a sack and lets it run slowly through his fingers. The dust floats in the light, drifting like snowflakes before falling to the floor. My father said the wind envies what grows in the earth, for it cannot grow anything of its own. It takes grain to feel what it is to sow, to reap. It steals, but not out of malice, out of longing. The miller falls quiet, his gaze distant. The turning wheel creaks, the stones hum, the stream outside chatters on. You find yourself imagining the north wind as he describes it, a vast invisible wanderer, roaming endlessly, jealous of what roots itself in the soil. Perhaps it passed through in the night, sighing over the fields, lifting the grain in its unseen arms, carrying it away to scatter beyond the hills. The thought is not frightening. It is melancholy, yes, but also strangely tender. Imagine the wind not as a thief, but as a lonely spirit makes the loss feel less cruel, more like a trade, seeds taken to be scattered in unknown lands, perhaps to grow wild where no hand has sown. The miller stirs from his silence and gestures toward the window. You follow his gaze. Outside, the frost lies heavy on the bank, but the wheel continues to turn, the water pushing it steadily. See, he says softly. The river does not care for wind. It flows always, carrying what it can, grinding what is brought. The wind may scatter, but the river gathers. Between them, balance is kept. He steps closer, lowering his voice, as though sharing a secret. There are remedies against frost, as you know, ashes, smoke, straw. But against the wind, only stories. Only the telling of them, and the listening. My father said that when you tell the tale of the north wind, it pauses to listen, and in listening, it forgets to take. Perhaps that is why I speak it now. You smile faintly, the rhythm of his words soothing. The miller has not given an explanation, not truly, but he has given you something else, a way to hear the mystery as a story, to rest within it as one rests within the hum of the stones. He reaches again into the sack and pulls out a small handful of flour. He presses it into your palm. Carry this, he says, not as food, but as memory, so that even if the fields are empty, you remember what they have given. You close your hand gently around the flour, feeling its softness, its fragility. It clings to your skin, dusting your fingers in pale powder. You know it will not last long, it will scatter with the next breeze, dissolve with the next drop of water. But in this moment, it is enough. The miller returns to his place by the beam, his eyes once more on the wheel. His face relaxes, his body leaning with the rhythm of the creaking wood. He has work to do, even if the grain is scarce. Work steady, work unending, as sure as the rivers flow. You step back into the morning air, carrying the flour in your hand. The wind brushes against your cheek, gentle now, not biting, as though softened by the telling of its tale. You breathe it in, slow and calm, and let it pass through you. Behind you, the mill continues its endless hum, the wheel turning, the stones grinding, the stream singing. Ahead of you, the path bends once more toward the fields, where the frost still waits, its whispers still weaving their story. And you walk on, steady, carrying the memory of the miller's words, and the tale of the north wind folded gently into your heart. Leaving the mill behind, you follow the lane that winds back toward the cottages. Smoke rises from chimneys now, thin and wavering, carrying the sense of hearth fires beginning their daily work. The frost still clings to the fields, but within the village, life stirs gently, low, steady. like the glowing embers that refuse to fade. Pass one cottage and hear the low murmur of women's voices. Their tones are soft, interwoven like threads in a tapestry, one voice rising, another falling, pauses filled by the crackle of firewood. The sound draws you closer, and soon you stand at an open doorway, where warmth spills out into the cold air. Inside, the hearth glows with a deep orange light. Women gather around it, their cloaks shed, their sleeves rolled to their elbows. Some kneel near the fire, stirring pots that steam with the scent of barley broth and turnip stew. Others sit at low stools, hands busy with tasks, ending a child's cloak, braiding straw into cord, grinding herbs in wooden bowls. The children sit close by, quiet now, lulled by the rhythm of their mother's hands and the steady warmth of the flames. You step softly across the threshold, welcomed by a nod and a smile. The room is modest, walls of wattle and daub, shelves lined with clay vessels, a table of rough wood scattered with tools and scraps of cloth. Yet the air is rich with comfort, woven from the mixture of firelight, food, and the steady presence of women who have kept such spaces alive through countless winters. One woman lifts her ladle, tasting the broth, then adds a pinch of dried sage from a pouch at her waist. She explains quietly that sage warms the body, that it chases away the cold lodged in the bones. Another woman, spinning wool by the hearth, speaks of rosemary, how its fragrance clears the mind, sharpens memory. A third, kneading dough with flour scarce, but sufficient, tells a story of her grandmother who always placed a cross upon each loaf before baking, both blessing and habit, a way of remembering that even simple bread carries sacredness. You listen, letting their words flow around you. They do not speak of the vanished grain with despair. Instead, they speak of what remains, of how to stretch what little they have into nourishment. They speak of turnips buried in cellars, of dried beans strung like beads, of milk shared among households. Their voices are calm, not hurried, for they know the rhythm of scarcity as well as abundance. They have learned that the hearth is not only a place of warmth, but of resilience. A child leans against his mother's knee, half asleep. She strokes his hair with one hand while stirring the stew with the other. The firelight paints her face in gold and shadow, etching the lines of labor and love. Around her, the other women smile, their eyes soft. In this space, each gesture is shared, each task part of a larger whole. You notice a small ritual unfold. One woman takes a coal from the hearth with iron tongs and places it carefully into a clay dish. She sets the dish near the doorway, where its faint glow greets anyone who enters. She explains that the coal is not merely warmth, but a guardian, an ember carried from yesterday's fire into today, ensuring continuity. No hearth is ever begun anew. It is always born from what came before. The coal is memory made flame. The conversation drifts to songs, as it often does when hands are busy. One woman hums a melody, soft and low, and soon another joins, then another, until the room fills with a gentle harmony. The song has no urgency, no sharp edges. It moves slowly, like a lullaby, its words speaking of fields, of rivers, of stars. You feel your own breathing slow, your shoulders ease, as though the song has settled into your bones. The bread is placed near the fire, the dough rising faintly in the heat. The children are given bowls of porridge, their spoons clinking softly against clay. A jug of milk is poured, shared from hand to hand. Nothing is wasted, every crumb is savoured. You are offered a piece of warm bread, its crust crackling faintly, its centre soft and fragrant. When you taste it, you feel not only the flavour of flour and water, but the essence of the hearth itself: air, endurance, hope. One of the women, her hair bound in a kerchief, begins to tell a tale. She speaks of a winter long ago, when frost struck early and hard, when grain was scarce and fear was near. Yet the women then, like the women now, gathered at the hearths. They shared what they had, they sang, they kept embers alive. And in the spring, the fields returned, the earth forgiving, the cycle renewed. The story is not told as a warning, but as a comfort, proof that even in loss, life continues. As the tale ends, the bread is broken and passed around the room. Each person takes a piece, no matter how small, and holds it a moment before eating. It is a silent ritual, a way of saying, we are together, we endure together, we are nourished not only by food but by one another. You remain by the hearth for a while longer, watching the flames dance, listening to the hum of voices and the soft laughter of children. Outside, The frost may keep its secrets, but here, within these walls, there is no mystery, only warmth, only presence. When at last you step back into the daylight, the scent of bread and stew clings to you, the warmth of the fire lingering in your chest. The cottages line the path like guardians, each hearth within glowing unseen but steady. You carry with you the image of women's hands stirring, spinning, kneading, mending, each movement quiet, each one essential. The fields may be bare, the seeds vanished, but the hearths remain, steadfast, like beating hearts within the village. And as you walk onward, you realize that the mystery of the vanished grain does not belong to the frost alone. It belongs also to these women, who answer absence with presence, emptiness with care. Their fire burns, and through it, the village endures. The warmth of the women's hearths lingers with you as you step back into the village lanes. Yet outside, the frost still waits, patient and unyielding. The fields shimmer faintly beneath the noon sun, their silver brightness almost blinding now. And though the day grows warmer, the mystery of the vanished grain has not melted away. If anything, it feels sharper in the clarity of daylight. Villagers gather near the well at the center of the square, their voices hushed. Some lean on wooden staffs, others clutch baskets half empty. The conversation drifts, not loud, but heavy, like smoke that refuses to rise. You pause among them, listening. It is a sign. One man mutters, his beard rimmed with frost. The land warns us. The grain has not gone, it has been taken, carried to the heavens, so that we remember our smallness. Another woman shakes her head. Not punishment. A lesson. We have grown careless. Too much pride in our harvests, too little thanks given. The fields have hidden themselves to remind us of humility. A younger villager, his face drawn with worry, speaks quietly. What if it means hunger, a winter harsher than any before? His words hang in the air, sharp and trembling. Others tighten their arms around their children, pulling them close. An elder, her back bent with age, lifts her voice, slow and steady. When I was a girl, the river froze so thick a cart could ride across. The fields were barren, the barns near empty. But still, we endured. And when spring came, it came with double strength. The earth does not forget. It tests, but it also restores. Her words spread calm, though unease still lingers. You sense that the villagers are not only worried about hunger, but about meaning. For them, the disappearance of the grain is not merely a mystery of nature, it is an omen, a message written upon the frost. You walk away from the square, following the murmurs of thought that echo in your mind. Across cultures, across centuries, omens have been sought in the flight of birds, in the fall of stars, in the shape of clouds. Here, in this medieval village, the empty fields have become their omen. Not a warning carved in words, but a riddle formed in absence. At the edge of the field, you pause once more. The frost gleams, but the emptiness beneath it presses upon you. You recall the miller's tale of the north wind, the weaver's whisper of the night unstitching, the remedies against frost, the warmth of the hearths. Each perspective weaves a thread. Now, the villagers' belief in an omen ties those threads together into something larger, tapestry of meaning. Perhaps the omen does not speak of loss at all. Perhaps it speaks of waiting, of cycles unseen. The grain may be gone from sight, but its essence lingers. The frost itself could be a veil, not an ending but a pause. Like the coal carried from one day's fire to the next, perhaps the vanished grain waits to be rekindled. The church bell tolls faintly in the distance, its note deep and steady. You let the sound settle into your chest. It reminds you that even omens, heavy with uncertainty, are softened when placed within the rhythm of time. The bell does not rush. It marks each hour as it comes, one after another, an unbroken chain. You sit upon a stone near the boundary of the field, letting your eyes wander over the silvered expanse. You imagine the grain not gone, but hidden beneath another sky, waiting to return. You imagine it carried on the breath of the north wind, scattered into places unseen, where it may grow wild and free. You imagine it tucked gently beneath the frost, cradled in sleep until the thaw awakens it. The omen, then, is not only about fear. It is also about trust. Trust in cycles, trust in the unseen, trust in the patience that every winter demands. The sun climbs higher, Children run along the edge of the field, their laughter bright against the hush. They do not see omens, they see glittering frost, a wonder to be touched, to be marveled at. They press their palms against the cold stalks, leave breath, clouds upon the air, and chase each other with careless joy. Their innocence reminds you that not all signs are heavy. Some are light, meant only to draw wonder. Villagers watch them, some with smiles, some with worry. But slowly, even the elders allow a small easing of their shoulders, a softening of their gaze. The omen remains, but it need not be carried as a burden alone. It can also be a story told by the fire, a memory passed on, a reminder that life is fragile, yet enduring. You rise from the stone, the frost crunching softly beneath your feet. The field does not speak in words, yet you feel its message in your bones. The grain's disappearance is not an end. It is a mystery, an omen, a story to be lived. And in the telling, in the remembering, it becomes something more than absence. It becomes presence, woven into the lives of those who endure. You turn back toward the village, the bell's voice still echoing faintly behind you, the children's laughter carrying forward. Between fear and faith, between omen and hope, the story continues, softly, patiently, like the rhythm of your own breath. The day drifts quietly onward. Frost still lingers on the fields, though the sun now rests higher in the sky, laying a pale wash of gold over the land. The villagers move through their routines with patience, their steps slow, their voices subdued. And yet, here and there, you hear another rhythm rising, softer one, less concerned with labor, more concerned with memory. It is the rhythm of stories, passed down like heirlooms, shared from father to child. Find yourself near the carpenter's cottage, where a man sits upon a wooden stool, a small boy nestled close against his knee. The boy's cheeks are flushed from cold, his eyes wide and eager. In his father's hands rests not a tool, but a piece of firewood, its bark rough. The man runs his calloused fingers along the grain as though it were parchment, and with a steady voice, he begins to tell. "When I was no older than you," he says, "the frost came early. The fields, just like these, turned silver overnight, and the barley was taken before it ripened. My father told me it was the work of spirits, spirits who wandered hungry, searching for food." The boy leans closer, eyes fixed upon his father's mouth. But the man continues, "The spirits did not take without giving. For in the spring that followed, the ground was richer than ever. The seeds we thought lost had been carried into the soil itself, planted deeper by the frost. When the thaw came, green shoots rose faster, stronger. We learned then that what vanishes is not always gone. Sometimes it waits to return in another form." The boy breathes a quiet "oh," the sound barely above the whisper of wind. His father smiles faintly, ruffling his hair. "Remember this," he says. "The earth has its own stories. And when you cannot see the grain, trust that it is still speaking." You move on, warmed by the scene. At another cottage, you find a different story unfolding. Blacksmith sits by the fire pit outside, hammer resting idle upon his knee. His daughter, no more than 10, stands beside him, her hands tucked into his large, soot-stained palm. He speaks in a voice that rumbles like embers. "Long ago," he says, "a knight rode through our valley. He came in winter, his armor shining though the land was poor. He asked the people for food, but they had none to give. The fields had been emptied by frost. The knight did not grow angry. Instead, he dismounted, removed his gauntlets, and worked beside the people. He carried wood, he lifted stones, he shared what little he had. When spring returned, the fields grew twice as strong, and the people remembered not hunger, but kindness. That, my child, is the lesson. When the grain is gone, what remains is each other." The daughter presses closer, her eyes bright with both wonder and pride. The blacksmith's hand rests gently upon her shoulder, steady as the anvil he shapes by day. You wander further and hear still more. On the steps of the mill, an elder tells a cluster of boys how the north wind once stole grain and scattered it into the mountains, where wildflowers now bloom. In the churchyard, a mother kneels beside her son, pointing to the bell tower as she whispers that each toll of the bell carries prayers to heaven, where the vanished grain waits, blessed and safe. Everywhere, fathers and mothers shape absence into narrative, turning mystery into meaning. Each story is different, yet all carry the same undercurrent: endurance, hope, and the quiet assurance that what vanishes is never wholly lost. We pause near the field's edge again. A father and his teenage son stand together, gazing over the frost. The father speaks low, his voice almost carried away by the breeze. "Do you see how the frost makes every stalk shine? When I was your age, my father told me that each spark of light is a seed's soul, visible only in winter. We think them gone, but they rise as stars upon the earth, waiting for their time to return." The boy listens intently, silent but thoughtful. You can see the reflection of the frost in his eyes, tiny sparks flickering as though he holds the field's stars within him. The father places a firm hand on his shoulder, and together they stand in silence, sharing not only words, but the weight of tradition. It strikes you that these stories are themselves seeds. Each one is planted gently into young hearts, to lie dormant until needed. In times of hunger, they will sprout as resilience. In times of doubt, they will grow into trust. Like the grain hidden beneath frost, the stories wait patiently, carried from one generation to the next. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the murmur of voices wash over you. They blend with the sound of the distant stream, with the low toll of the bell, with the faint sigh of the wind. The village hums with its own lullaby, woven from memory and care. When you open your eyes, the frost still lies across the land, unchanged, yet it feels less empty now. It is filled with echoes of fathers' voices, with the attentive silence of children, with the unseen roots of stories planted deep. You turn once more toward the path, your heart steadied by the knowledge that even in the face of mystery, the village does not falter. It tells stories, it passes them along, and through them, the people endure. And so you walk, steady and calm, carrying those voices with you. As the fields wait, as the frost whispers, as the tale continues. The day leans toward afternoon now, though the winter sun is pale and distant, more a companion than a master. The frost still lingers, though softened at the edges, glistening faintly like glass worn smooth by gentle hands. The villagers move slowly through the square, carrying their tasks, their worries, their quiet hopes. You find yourself walking once again toward the field. The silvered stalks stand motionless, guardians of their own mystery. Yet this time, you do not hear whispers of loss alone. You also hear murmurs of planning, of preparation. For even in the face of emptiness, the village turns its thoughts toward what will come next. At the edge of the field, a group of farmers gather, their cloaks pulled tightly against the cold. They kneel in the soil, scraping gently with wooden sticks, testing the ground beneath the frost. One of them lifts a handful of earth, dark and moist, and crumbles it in his palm. "It still breathes," he says softly. "The earth still breathes." The others nod. They speak not with despair, but with quiet determination. They discuss the seeds that remain stored, the ones not vanished. They plan how to divide them carefully, how to plant them wisely when the frost has passed. Fewer fields, perhaps, one man suggests, but stronger care for each. Another speaks of rotation, of letting one patch rest while another is sown. They know the ways of the earth, learned from fathers and grandfathers. Even as grain disappears, the knowledge of how to tend, how to plant, remains unbroken. Nearby, women arrive with baskets of herbs. They scatter rosemary along the borders, a gesture of blessing. A child places a tiny cross of twigs at the corner of the field, pressing it gently into the frozen soil. His mother smiles faintly, whispering for protection. These small acts, part ritual, part tradition, weave together with the farmer's plans, forming a tapestry of hope. You stand among them, feeling the mixture of fear and faith. Their voices are soft, measured, but within each word lies resilience. They do not know what spring will bring. They cannot be certain the seeds will take. But still they plan, still they prepare. As you listen, an elder raises her voice. She carries a small pouch tied at her waist, filled with seeds saved from last summer. She lifts it high, the cloth worn, the knot tight. "Here is tomorrow," she says simply. It is small, but it is enough. The villagers fall quiet, watching as she loosens the knot and lets a few grains fall into her palm. They gleam in the pale light, fragile yet enduring. The sight steadies everyone. A hush falls, not of despair, but of reverence. The seeds are tiny, yet in them rests the promise of a future. They are memory and prophecy, past and possibility bound together. You imagine the spring to come, the thawing earth, the soft rains, the green shoots piercing upward. You imagine villagers bending low, pressing seed into soil with hands both weary and hopeful. You imagine the slow unfolding of growth, each stalk rising like a hymn. The frost may steal, but spring restores. This truth, carried in cycles older than memory, lives within every heart present. A boy asks his father, "What if the seeds fail?" The man places a firm hand on his shoulder. "Then we will plant again and again." For the earth does not abandon those who wait with patience. The boy nods, reassured not by certainty, but by the strength of persistence. The conversation drifts to tools whose to be sharpened, plows to be mended, oxen to be cared for through the cold months. Men and women alike speak of tasks to be done, storing what remains of the grain, watching for rot, drying herbs for both food and healing. Each task is a thread, small but essential, woven into the fabric of survival. As they speak, the church bell tolls once, marking the hour. Its voice rolls across the fields, steady and calm. It reminds them, and you, that time itself is a kind of soil. Each hour planted with patience brings forth its own harvest. One of the villagers begins to hum softly, a tune about spring. Others join, their voices weaving into the cold air. The melody is gentle, rising and falling like breath. It carries no promise of ease, but it carries something deeper, continuity. You realize that this song, too, is a kind of planting. Each note is a seed sown into the silence, destined to bloom in memory long after the sound fades. You kneel at the field's edge, pressing your palm against the cold soil. You feel the hardness of frost, but beneath it, a quiet warmth, the life that waits unseen. You whisper words not of fear, but of trust. The earth listens, as it always has, patient and unhurried. When you rise again, the villagers are dispersing, their steps slow but steadied. The elder still holds her pouch of seeds, tied again at her waist, close to her heart. She smiles as she passes you, her eyes bright despite the lines of age. "It is enough," she murmurs once more. You watch her go, then turn your gaze back to the field. The frost glitters, hiding the mystery of the vanished harvest. Yet now, alongside the mystery, you feel the pulse of hope. It is not loud. It does not shout. It breathes softly, like the earth beneath your feet, waiting, waiting, waiting for the right time to bloom. And so you walk onward, carrying with you the knowledge that even in absence, the seeds of tomorrow are already held within today. The day folds slowly into evening. The pale winter sun, never strong to begin with, sinks low beyond the hills, leaving behind a sky brushed in lavender and rose. The frost upon the fields deepens once more, glittering with the fading light, like 1,000 tiny embers scattered across the earth. The villagers, after a day of worry and work, begin to return to their homes. One by one, chimneys send up thin trails of smoke, and the village exhales the comfort of evening. You walk down the lane toward the central cottage, where several families have gathered together. Tonight, no one eats alone. The mystery of the vanished grain, though heavy, has drawn the people closer, reminding them of the strength found in sharing. When you step inside, you are greeted by warmth, light, and the gentle clamor of voices. The hearth at the far wall burns brightly, its flames alive and welcoming. Pots hang over the fire, bubbling with stew, turnips, carrots and beans, seasoned with herbs gathered in summer and dried for winter's keeping. Loaves of bread, though smaller than in times of plenty, rest in baskets lined with cloth. Bowls of porridge steam gently, enriched with what milk could be spared. Every dish is modest, yet together they form a feast, not of abundance but of presence. The families sit close, shoulder to shoulder at long wooden tables. The children are placed in the middle, where many hands can reach them, many eyes can watch them. Their laughter is quieter than usual, but still it rises, sweet and thin, like the high notes of a flute against the deeper hum of adult voices. Before the meal begins, silence falls. An elder stands, her back curved but her voice strong. She offers a blessing, simple words, thanking the earth for what remains, asking for strength to endure and remembering those who came before. Her words drift over the room like a shawl, wrapping each person in quiet unity. When she finishes, There is no applause, no response, but a collective exhale. The silence itself is the answer. The food is then passed, hand to hand. Each person takes carefully, leaving enough for the next. A mother breaks her bread in half, slipping part of it onto her neighbor's plate. A boy ladles stew for the elder beside him, spilling a little but smiling shyly as he does. No one measures portions, no one counts. What matters is that no bowl is left empty, no hand is left without bread. You are offered a bowl of stew. Its steam carries the scent of thyme and bay leaf, herbs that warm not only the body, but the spirit. The broth is simple, yet when you taste it, you feel it spread comfort through you, as if the very earth had been simmered into its depths. A piece of bread follows, its crust firm, its center soft, bearing the faint cross pressed upon it before baking. You chew slowly, reverently, aware that every bite carries the weight of effort, of faith, of resilience. As the meal continues, conversation drifts gently through the room. Stories are told, not of fear, but of memory. One man recalls the harvest festival of years past, when the tables were laden with roasted meat, fresh apples, and barrels of ale. His eyes shine with nostalgia, but he does not tell the story with bitterness. Instead, he tells it with gratitude, a reminder that such abundance once was and may be again. A woman tells a tale of her grandmother, who lived through 3 winters of scarcity and yet always found ways to stretch a meal, adding water to the stew, grinding acorns into flour, foraging nettles in the spring. The children listen wide-eyed, their spoons pausing as they imagine nettle soup, a cornbread. The story is not told to frighten them, but to plant within them the seed of resourcefulness. Laughter begins to mingle with the stories. Someone recalls how, during one lean year, a goose wandered into the chapel and refused to leave, honking loudly through the priest's sermon. For weeks afterward, the villagers joked that the goose was a holy messenger sent to remind them that life always finds a way to intrude upon solemnity. The room ripples with soft chuckles, the kind that rise easily, needing no force. You notice how the glow of the hearth reflects upon every face, softening lines of worry, illuminating eyes with gentle light. The flicker of flame blurs hardship, replacing it with warmth, with the illusion, no, the truth that here, in this moment, there is enough food to share, enough warmth to sustain, enough presence to remind each person that they are not alone. Toward the end of the meal, the elder rises again. She carries a small pouch and opens it carefully, sprinkling a few grains onto the table. The room falls silent. These, she says softly, are what remain. Not many, but enough to sow. Tonight we eat what is here. Tomorrow we carry forward what can still grow. Her words are a bridge between present and future, between absence and promise. The villagers nod, some closing their eyes in quiet agreement. The children grow sleepy as the fire burns low. They lean against their mothers, their heads heavy, their eyes fluttering closed. A man hums a lullaby, slow and gentle, and others join, their voices weaving a cradle of sound. The song has no urgency. It drifts like smoke, curling into every corner, lulling even the weary adults toward stillness. When the last bowls are cleared and the last loaf divided, the villagers remain seated, lingering in the warmth. No one rushes to leave. They know that this moment, this togetherness, is as important as food itself. The mystery of the vanished grain remains unsolved, but here, around the shared table, they have answered it in their own way. They have chosen presence over despair, generosity over fear. You step outside once more into the evening air. The sky is dark now, scattered with stars. The frost gleams beneath the starlight, unchanged yet somehow gentler. You breathe deeply, carrying with you the scents of bread, stew, and wood smoke, carrying the memory of voices joined in song. The shared table, like the hearths, has become another seed, planted not in soil, but in the hearts of the villagers and in yours. And from such seeds, hope will grow, even when fields lie empty. Night has returned to the village once more. The sky above is a deep indigo, scattered with stars that glimmer faintly, like seeds sown across the heavens. The moon has grown brighter, its crescent edge sharp, silvering the frost that still clings to the fields. The air is colder now, but calm, a restless wind, no strange rustling, only the steady breath of a winter night. You walk toward the chapel again, guided by the faint glow of its lanterns. The door stands open, and within you see a few villagers kneeling in the pews, their heads bowed, their hands folded. Their voices rise softly, not in words of desperation, but in chants of patience. A child stirs in her mother's arms, lulled not by the warmth of the fire, but by the cadence of prayer, steady as a lullaby. Then the bell tolls. Its note rolls across the valley, low and resonant, filling the stillness. The sound drifts over rooftops, through fields, across the frosted hedges. It carries with it something larger than sound, something that binds every heart in the village to the rhythm of time itself. The second toll follows, unhurried, deep. Then another and another, each strike spaced with care, allowing silence to bloom between them. The silence does not feel empty. It feels like breath, like the space between heartbeats. Each pause reminds you that stillness is as necessary as sound, waiting as necessary as action. The villagers listen in reverence. Some close their eyes. Others lift their faces toward the tower. The children, now sleepy from the day's labors and the evening meal, lean against their parents, the bell's vibration soothing them into drowsiness. Even the animals seem to quiet. The dogs curl closer to doorways, the chickens settle their wings. You step outside and stand upon the chapel steps. From here, the whole village lies before you, bathed in starlight. Smoke curls from chimneys, glowing faintly as it rises into the cold. The fields beyond glimmer in silver. A silent sea. For a moment, the frost looks less like a thief and more like a guardian, keeping the land in its embrace until the earth is ready to wake. The bell tolls again, its echo reaching across the frozen fields. You imagine the sound sinking into the soil itself, into the hidden seeds, reminding them of time, of cycles, of patience. Perhaps the seeds listen, even in their sleep. Perhaps they hear the bell as a promise. You are not forgotten. You will rise again. The priest steps out of the chapel beside you, his face calm, his breath visible in the cold. He does not speak at first. He only listens, letting the bell's voice pass through him. Then, in a low tone, he says, "Every toll is a reminder. What falls silent today will sing tomorrow. What seems lost will return." You nod, not needing more words. The bell itself has spoken enough. As the final strike fades into the night, silence settles once more. But it is a gentle silence, full of warmth despite the cold. You feel it pressing lightly around you, like a blanket drawn close. Villagers begin to drift homeward, their lanterns swaying like tiny stars along the lanes. Doors close softly, but not in fear. They close in rest, in trust that the night will keep them safe. The hearths within glow warmly, carrying forward the coal from day to day, the ember that never dies. You remain a while longer, gazing out at the fields. The frost gleams, and for a moment you see it not as absence, but as promise. Beneath its silver cloak, life waits quietly. The seeds are hidden, but not gone. They rest in patience, as the people must rest, as you must rest. A soft breeze stirs, brushing your face. It carries no harshness now, only a whisper of tomorrow. The stars above shimmer, their light ancient yet alive, reminding you that cycles are endless, that endings are only beginnings turned in another direction. You take a slow breath, letting the air fill you, letting the night settle into your bones. The bell's echo still lingers, faint but steady, like the heartbeat of the land. You close your eyes and hear it within yourself, a rhythm that will carry you into sleep. As you turn at last from the chapel, walking the frost-silvered path back toward the quiet cottages, you carry with you the truth that has been whispered all along. The crops may vanish. The frost may claim the fields. But spring will return. Life will rise again. The bell has promised it. And in that promise, you rest.